Uncensored Radio Real Talk Roundtable. Real life, real laughs, real talk.
Okay, let's switch gears. So we're going to talk about parenting. And we've all got different experiences. Katie, I know that you've got children. You were married. Yeah. Jeff, you adopted children you were married as well, and that failed very sadly. Look, I had a failed relationship as well, but we went through a surrogacy process together and had a child. And then Vera, you were probably the smartest of all of us and chose not to have children.
I don't know that there was so much a choice as an event.
Let's go back to. I'll start with you, Ms. Underwood.
Sure.
When did you decide that you wanted to be a mother and that you were going to go through the process of having a family?
I think I always had it in my sights. When I was young, I was very clear in my mind that I would have children sometime between the age of 25 and 35. And that if I had not had them by the age of 35, that biologically I should probably just accept that that wasn't going to happen and that I would, I don't know, get a dog or a cat or a goat or something to nurture. So as it turned out, I was married for 10 years. That was supposed to be the man that I was having children with. That didn't work out. So at the age of 30, when I realized that was going nowhere, I cut and run from that relationship and thought, right, well, now I've got 5 years left to not only find a new partner, but potentially procreate, So I kind of put the pressure on myself, but dated for a while, casually dated for a year, quite successfully, but also realized that wasn't really getting me any closer to a quality relationship. Lots of casual sex does not add up to finding a good parent for your child. So I kind of shut
it's fun though.
It was fun, but it wasn't getting me where I wanted to go. So I was very clear that was what I wanted. Anyway, then I met a man, and I'd set a mental intention. I'm now looking for the father of my children, and we caught up a couple of times, and I was very clear with him from the get-go. He was 10 years older than me, and I said, "Look, I'm 34. I'm not interested in something casual. I'm actually looking for something serious, and not only that, but I'm looking to make a family with someone." I said, "So I'm not asking for you to do that right now, but I am making it very clear that that's where I'm headed. And if that's not in your scope, then please don't waste my time." So as it turned out, he was, interested in having a child. He'd already had 2 before. So, we continued on. Little did we know that we were going to get blessed with twins and a lot quicker than we had planned. So it all happened very, very fast. And I think probably because of that, our intimate relationship was difficult to maintain. But we separated. Yeah, we separated when the kids were 18 months, but I stand by the choice that I made as finding the father for my children, because to this day, my girls are almost 10. I have an excellent co-parenting and friendship relationship with this man still. And, we are, for all intents and purposes, happy families. We just live in 2 separate houses. So that's sort of how that worked out.
It sounds like the best.
It does.
Ideal parenting situation.
Yeah.
You live over there. I'll live here.
It works for me. So
I'm with you.
Well, Jeff, let's talk about your parenting situation. So give us the lowdown. I know, but just for people watching.
It's starting to be a retread. It's feeling like Terminator Salvation. So
this is like the 12th sequel.
I was married. Like, you were watching the original show. You followed all the drama with our wedding and all the chaos. Joe and I did foster care for a long time. We had older girls that we had until they aged out. And then we were actually going to end our foster care time because we had a bunch of sub shops we owned. And they called and said they had these little guys with a brother on the way. And we talked about it. We were like, yeah, let's do it. It's going to be crazy with all these businesses, but let's do it. And then the boys came. Gabe was born 3 weeks later. And then when Gabe was 8 months old, Joe walked out the door, and that was that. And it was just me. So I finished foster care with them and adopted them on my own. And it's been an interesting ride, man. But I wouldn't change anything. Like, I feel very blessed. Like, I always wanted to be a parent, but I realized in my very early 20s I did not want to pass on my genetics.
Oh gosh. Look, I got that from you straight away though, Jeff, that you were very much a mama bear and that you really look after and nurture people. And like, when I come over there, the first time I met you and like I just came to the United States to go and stay with this stranger, I was
We
taken
just
in
knew
and
each other online for 12 years or
hey,
whatever. Yeah.
oh,
Bring
got
your
the
kid, come on.
introduction. Um, no, he was very very caring, and he's very like I can just see like those kids are so lucky to have you, because you do a lot for them and you do it with such good intentions and you've got a good heart, and that's the only thing I'm ever going to say to you that's nice. All right, and this is done here.
Well, I can't believe you said that because listen, somebody had to be the adult while you were there. I'm just saying.
Oh, shut up. Yeah, so let's talk about my train wreck life. So what I went through, a whole surrogacy process. So every state has their own surrogacy laws. Queensland has the Surrogacy Act. We went through that together. So I was with my for 4 years, and it was quite an expensive process. I think from go to work, we paid legals, we had to pay for counselling, which he passed with flying colours, mind you. Go narcissism. And, to deem us as we're fit parents and that we know what we're going into, yada, yada. The surrogate had to go through the same, which I had to pay for. I had to pay for her legals, paid for an egg donor, paid for IVF. We went overseas to do the transfer. And it ended up being a $50,000 miscarriage. And was just it was a big blow for me, and I was quite down about it. And I knew I'd gone through this whole process from my 20s. So I did this when I was 32. I went through this whole thing since my 20s. I'd been planning it all. And so when that happened, I was so down. And then a friend of mine just said, look, I'll just have a baby for you. I'll do it for you. And I had to think about it for a whole year because I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be her egg. It's going to be her child too. We'll be mum and dad. Is it going to work out? And it just sort of come to a point. Like, I'm one of those people, I guess I get quite anxious about things and I let it build and build. And I was like, you know what? We're not getting any younger. Someone's offering to do this for me right now. Let's just do it. So after about 12 months of thinking it over, we just did it. And then on my child's first birthday, my partner decided that they were already having an affair and that it would be good just to disappear on the day of the first birthday. And that's just life. And that was, in hindsight, though, it was good because it was a malignant narcissist. And I think I couldn't imagine being in that situation now because it's been 3 years and I couldn't even imagine going back to the person I was then, and it was horrible, and hard to explain to people. And that's why, like when we were talking earlier about PTSD, I think it is one of those things that sort of comes out later when you don't even realize that you were under all that trauma and stress until you're out of it. And but yeah, that's so. But I always wanted to be a parent. I am doing life on hard mode as a single parent right now, like as a single parent. Like I have no co-parenting at all going on. My mother helps me a lot, which I'm very grateful for. And I think, yeah, like I wouldn't change it for the world. It's not easy and sometimes it's not fun. Even cutting lunches. Fuck, I hate cutting lunches. Fucking hate it. But I do it every day because I wouldn't change a thing. So Miss Vera,
Well, I always planned to have kids, but I knew I wanted to finish college and get my career on the path. And took longer than I thought to get through SU. I was 28 before I graduated, and I didn't really start looking for Mr. Right until I was in my 30s, and then it was too late. You know.
Wait, Vera, I need to stop you right there. In your 30s, remember when we were talking about monogamy, and you were saying, "Fuck me on your fire truck."
What?
Katie, you were there for that. She's like, you're 30, and it's like, oh yeah, fuck me on your kid's fire truck.
I think I must have missed that.
A number of inappropriate relationships. The kids were not in the house at the time of the alleged fire truck.
Well, then it was appropriate. Then it was fine. So Vera, though, so you planned to have children, but it just didn't work out that way. Like how
it didn't happen. I got into a serious relationship. I thought I was with my life mate. It didn't turn out that way. And then I was really very devastated and not willing to move on or look for additional. And then the circus closed. You know, I had to have a hysterectomy. I had cysts on my ovaries, and it was done.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like you'd stop me if you're not comfortable. But like, how do you feel like now, looking back? Like, is there regrets there or anything like that, or?
Every now and then, every 100 years or so, it's not often. I think, shit, I'm never going to have grandkids, you know? But I have a beautiful niece and a beautiful nephew who I was very active in their upbringing. They both honor me on Mother's Day, you know? I have wonderful friends.
I was going to say, then, you could be the cool one. Your sister has to be the villain. You're the cool one.
I think Vera is very motherly, and I think when we met, I was pretty young, and it always seemed you were always very supportive of anybody around you. Like, you kind of were, you know, a surrogate mom in a lot of ways. I do remember there was...
She took in the strays.
Yeah, there was a certain time I called her.
A lot of strays.
And Vera was like there in a heartbeat. She came right over and talked me off the ledge.
Well, I think there's lots of ways, you know, and that's a good example, segue to really just expand this conversation and get that there's lots of different ways to be, whether you call it a parent or be a carer. You know, it doesn't have to be biological. You can be a stepmom, a stepdad. You can be a cool auntie or uncle. You know, you can always choose to be involved with younger people and children if you want to, or whether it's through the foster system and all of these ways. You know, it doesn't all have to come out of your body.
Yeah,
you know, there's so many different ways that if that's something that you feel called to do, that you can do it. And there's always a need for good-hearted, caring people to look out for young people in this world. So I think there's a lot of different ways people can express their desire to parent, even if their ovaries or their testes have long shut up shop, you know. It can still be done.
Yeah, it's scary that it turns out I'm quite fertile. As a gay man, just throw that out there to everyone.
This is why I had to make sure that whoever I was with was on the testosterone or something, because there's not passing on those genetics. I wasn't going to do that. My aunt and I made a pact when I was real young, and I'm like, it's not good. Like, I don't need any more Emmets in the world.
And that's a valid choice too, though, Jeff. Like, I know we joke about it, and we talk a lot of shit, but you were very serious about that. Yeah.
I did not want to pass on my genetic profile. I did not think the mental health of my mother's family or my father's family. It wasn't something that I wanted to continue. I kind of was like, there's enough kids on the planet that don't have a home. They don't have parents. They have nowhere to go. And nobody... I don't feel like it gets talked about enough. Like, people go on this pro-life kick, and it drives me nuts because... they're pro-life. We have to stop abortions. And I'm like, how many kids have you fostered?
How
many children have you adopted?
I am right there with you, Jeffrey.
You know, I don't feel like you really... I mean, not that I have a say in a woman's body, but that's what... I'm pro-choice. Like, you get to do what you want to do because there's enough kids that aren't being taken care of that are stuck in a horrible system. And that's a problem. That keeps the the situation going. And then our system's so broken. Like the mother of my kids, I took the time to get to know her and know her story. And I realized that the system failed her. And that's where she grew to hate those people. And she didn't trust them. And I kind of just looked at them all at one point, and I'm like, okay, so you pulled her out, and then you put her back into a bad environment. And you wonder why she is anti all of you? Like, this doesn't take a rocket scientist, you know? And I actually got to work with her and try to help her. Now she had twins that she, you know, so far has done well, and she's been able to keep them. And it's an exciting thing, and I got to watch this woman grow because somebody took the time to just talk to her and not treat her like she was a statistic or a piece of shit. It was just, it's really sad that, like, that's the system we have that's supposed to help us.
Absolutely.
I don't think, and look, in Australia, we're lucky that we've got a pretty good social security, but I do think, especially for young women, they aren't really that supported as far as, you know, if you become a mother and things like that. It's a tough gig, and I think we've still got a long way to go. I think we are going in the right direction here. We've got good things happening. We've got mothers groups. You know, we have midwives that will assist new parents and things like that. But I think entering parenthood, especially if it's an unexpected, you know, initiation, it's not an easy thing to do, and it's something that really tests you on every single level, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I think you sort of visit all those things, all your fears are realized. Would you guys agree?
Yeah. I think one of the things I was thinking about, you know, parenting, and, you know, the 3 out of the 4 of us have had, you know, relationships break up when the children have, you know, become front and center. And I think from my experience and what I've observed in other relationships that break up in those first couple of years, and it happens a lot, it seems to me that so many people enter into intimate relationships looking for their partner to nurture their inner child, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
They rather than going, I'm a whole complete adult, I can parent myself and I'm going to share my life with another person, they actually look to partner with someone that's going to help them try and solve those inner child needs. Now, when there's just the two of you, you can play that game for as long as you like. But then when an actual real bona fide child comes in and actually fully really needs you and needs you now to be an adult all of the time, if you have one partner that's inner child is deciding to have a tantrum and feels like the real child is now competing for your attention, then they cut and run and they bail, you know. And I experienced a portion of that, and I hear that energy in your stories as well.
Well, I literally, the text I got that day, I mean, this is the day of the first birthday, was, this isn't my life. Like, this is not what I'm signed up for. And I was just like, well, bounce, baby. See you later.
Yeah, because they want to keep being the child, you know, they want to keep being the center of your world. But when you decide to partner with someone, regardless of gender or whatever, sexuality, you know, two people come together and decide to be parents, part of that conversation is, we're deciding to be adults, to fully adult now, because that's what's required when you decide to be a parent. And I see that so many people don't really understand that, and maybe you can't ever really fully understand it until you're there and you're like, right, I'm actually now, somebody needs something. I can't sit and have a tantrum on my bed when I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old to look after. You know, I have to parent myself and then parent them. There's no one else to cry to now. You know, I can't just drop everything. I have to be an adult every day. You know, I think that's, and as a single parent in particular, I think that's one of the more challenging things I faced when my kids were young. You know, I'm cruising now. They're 9 years old. They're really easy. They can do their own lunches. You know, I don't have to do that anymore. But when they were really little, you know, there's those days where it's like, I don't want to cook. I don't want to clean. I don't want to pick you up. I don't want to change your nappy. But you know what? I've got to, because there's no one else here to do that. And I need to keep showing up for you as an adult because you're a child. So it's really quite distressing when you hook up with a partner who suddenly exposes themselves as a child walking around in adult skin, going, well, actually, they're not adulting here. You know, they're having a tantrum and now they're out the door, or they're having an affair, or they're doing whatever. So
What about
I think,
me?
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think what you're saying too, like it was very frightening for me. Gabe was maybe had just turned 2, and I all of a sudden started feeling really sick, feel like low energy. Going to the doctor, they couldn't figure out what was wrong. It was to the point where I was struggling to stay awake through the day, and then I found out I had mono, and I like have a massive temperature. It's the kid's first week in school. Aiden got thrown out the first day of school. He tried to run out the building and run down the street to go home. I had to go pick him up. I have a temperature of 104. I'm sweating through my clothes. The next day, Aiden's sick. So now I've got to take him to the doctor. I'm in the doctor's office. I'm like gross and embarrassed. I want to die. I was on my own, and there was one of the scariest things. And I think, like with coronavirus, that's what frightened me the most. Was what the hell am I going to do if I get sick again? Because when it's just you and there's 3 of them and 2 have special needs that are intense and you feel like death, it was the scariest moment of my life. I cried more than when I realized how alone I was. That I did not have a support system in place to help me. Like the help that I needed, you know? And
Right.
it was terrifying. It's not. I don't.
Well, and it's interesting just to quickly say too, like obviously I've made it clear in my circumstance that my ex-partner hasn't seen my child since she was 1. Like in your circumstance, Jeff, like you adopted together.
No.
Is there any co-parenting at all happening?
No,
Or
I adopted them on my own. He left while they were still in foster care.
Okay.
And it wasn't like your situation. Like it was, we were fighting, we were not getting along. It was stuff about us. He very much loved Gabe. Was very devastated to leave him, and he decided to move back to where he was from, like 2 hours away. And you know, I tried to be like, okay, well, you need to come every other weekend or what, you know. And it just, there was always a reason, you know, he couldn't do it, or you know, we had the businesses too, so I'd have to be working crazy hours, and he'd go, oh, I can't do this, or I can't be here this time, I can't. And it's like, you quit the job, I'm the only one bringing in money. What do you fucking want from me? Like, how am I supposed to do this all? And the final straw was on one of the busiest days of the week. I had posted like the day before, and I swear on my life, I did not post this. It was a meme, and I thought it was funny, and I didn't know what he was doing, and I didn't think he was doing, you know, he wasn't hooking up with anybody, but it said, isn't it funny how everybody sleeps different? My roommate sleeps outside, I sleep on my stomach, my ex sleeps with everybody. You know, kind of, I thought, so I shared it, and I had gone through, like, it was bad in the beginning, and blocked or defriended anybody that had anything to do with him. Somebody sent him a screenshot of it, so he's texting me at work. Like, how can you just keep this going? You got to post shit like that. I'm like, because it was funny. You know? Like, it wasn't about you. But the fact that you think it's about you says more about what you. And so he's like, you need to come home. I'm not watching these kids anymore. You're on your fucking own. You can figure it out, blah, 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 blah. He was just talking shit, though, because I showed up, I left work, and I walked in the door, and it was the only time that we fought in front of the kids. And I'm like, get the fuck out right now. Just get the fuck out. And I'm like, you know, walking him to the door because I'm done. Like, you're going to threaten me that I can't, how am I supposed to work the rest of the week because you're just going to bail? Then get the fuck out because we're not playing this game anymore. And that was kind of the end of it. So over me, you know, and then after he's like, oh, you wouldn't let me see the kids. Nah, dude, you said you were done. You were walking out. At no point did you call and ask me to see the kids. You didn't even ask how they were. You'd ask me about money or whatever, but you didn't ask or you didn't want to see the kids. And I've never said this really publicly or anything because I've always made excuses. Blame the foster care agency. And because I felt bad and I didn't want him to take the hit. And I think I'm just to the point where it's just what happened. And I don't care anymore. Like, it's his problem. He's the one that's going to have to deal with it when those kids are older and they want to know what happened to Teddy Joe.
Well, it ain't the
If they
Brady
even
Bunch,
remember him.
right?
They do. That's the sad
They
thing.
do?
It's like
Do
the
they?
two older boys do, and Gabe and him were so bonded. Like Gabe and him were closer than I were. I was
Yep.
gone 15 hours a day. I was getting up with Gabe at night, but I wasn't there that much. Joe was always there. So that was the part that I always struggled to wrap my head around, was how did you just leave them? It's not about him and I, but it was about them. And I think in therapy, that was the thing. I never really got over that. I'm still not over it. It's still like, I don't care about him and I. I don't understand how people do that.
Well, I think that's, as a non-parental observer, I think that's one of the biggest fails as parents, as these parents failing to put the kids first. You know, like Katie was saying, you don't have
I think
a
Katie's
choice.
got it right though. Like
Katie's
they're
got it right.
co-parenting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what you have to adopt.
Yeah.
There's no room
Yeah.
to feed the inner child. And so many people, I don't know if this is specific to Americans, but I see so many people who aren't willing to give up their fun because they're
Correct.
parents, and it's just.
It's not so much about giving up the fun, but just making sure that your children have their needs met first.
Well,
and that then part of our self-care perhaps as adults is to make sure that we are still having some fun, so that we don't resent our parental duties. We don't resent having to be an adult. But I get what you mean. There is a certain point where you have to go, my life is not just about me anymore.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
There are other people
and I think that's the biggest thing that we swallow. Hey.
Yeah, but it's not just about me. It has to be, my children's needs have to be front and center. And then, of course, I want to look after my own needs as well, and that's essential. But it's definitely that ego step of it's not all about me anymore.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think,
and that's the leap.
And that's why it's sort of, it makes everything as a parent too, like going into a relationship now, I'm not at the point where I want to do that, because I think I've got a really young child and that's where my focus is and my energies are going to be spent on her. I went on a few dates with someone and I got this crazy text one day. Sorry, I'm outing you here, mate. Like, I don't feel like I'm number one and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, because you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, because you're not. Like, good insight. And I was just like, you know what? If that's what you're looking for, I said, you ain't getting it from me, and I'm real sorry. I'm not able to give that to you. So, I think that's probably me adulting now, because I was all in my 20s. I sort of look back now, I'm like, oh shit, I was probably pretty codependent. Like, I was in a 7-year relationship, and I think we're still friends now. I think we just together because we just wanted to, to belong somewhere and have someone and whatever. I don't think there was ever a lot of romance. And looking now, I'm like, I don't need that anymore. And I'm sort of glad that, everything's hard. It's not easy. Like, single income, single parent, lots of duties. Holy shit, she does 4 dance classes now. I can't cope. But I'm doing it all myself, and I don't need anyone. And I've learnt that lesson in my older years.
What do you think, though, are some of the positives about doing it alone? Right? Like, I think we all bitch a lot, right? A single parenting's hard, right? But I think there's some really big joys there.
I don't have anyone to answer to, but I've also got no one to blame. So the other day, my daughter dropped the F-bomb while I was carrying her in MC. And she had her ballet slippers on. She was in her leotard and everything. I was carrying her because I didn't want her to walk in her ballet slippers. And I could see she was fiddling with it. It was falling off her foot. And then all of a sudden, she's just like, Dad, I'm sick of this effing thing. This fucking thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, me. That's something I would say. And I have to take ownership of that. I'm just like very calmly. I'm like, oh, we don't say words like that, sweetie. Daddies shouldn't say them, and little children can't say them. So. but just slipped straight out. And it was all me. Got no one to blame.
I think one of the advantages to single parenting is that there's no conflict in how you discipline your children. I think sometimes in a dual parent family, kids can play one parent against the other. Whereas when there's just you, there's no one else to go and run to. It's like, oh, if mum says no, I'll go and see if I can sweet talk dad. It's like, no, the buck stops with me. You know, this is the behavior, this is the outcome. And I'm able to, interact with my children in a consistent way that I think works best. Now, having said that, obviously I try and be on the same page with their father as well. And, you know, we obviously have the same sorts of rules and boundaries in place. But, you know, in the moment, it's nice to not have another adult that's going to conflict to what I'm saying or doing in that heated moment or that situation that I'm in with my kids. And I kind of like being in control in that way. It's like, no, I'm calling the shots here.
And kids aren't stupid. They will play you. They will know.
They absolutely will. They'll try it on. And even between our two households, simple things like how many hours they're allowed to be on their iPads for, or what the rules are around that, and their dad and I have made it very clear. It's like, no, Daddy and I might not be in the same house, but we're on the same page. So don't try and push either of us over the edge on that. But I think for me, one of the major benefits to single parenting that I love is I don't have to clean up any other adult's mess. I'm already cleaning up two little children's, and even then I'm trying to train them to clean up their own stuff. I don't want to have to clean up after another adult, that's was a huge issue for me when I was living with him. I just, if I clean my room, it's still clean at the end of the day. And I like that. So I kind of I like the living alone aspect of it. It's actually one of the big pluses of single parenting. It's like, if I clean my kitchen and I come back in 12 hours, it's still clean, so I like that.
And
you're in control.
Like
Vera, as an aunt, have you found disciplining your relationship with your sisters? How did that really work for you?
I'm not your mommy. What your mommy says goes, might not be the decision I would make, but it's your mother's decision and she made it. So I have to follow her rules.
A little shade there.
I didn't really. No,
my mother parents differently to me now. Like when we were kids, she was fairly strict, but now as a grandmother, she's not. And so my daughter can do whatever she wants. She can eat whatever she wants. She can get away with everything.
That's different.
It is, but I'm she spends a lot of time with grandma. And so I do notice sometimes then there'll be some behavioral things and or expectations that I'm just not going to meet. But my daughter's already, she knows how to play us. She can roll us like dice. Like she knows what she can do with grandma, and she knows not to try it with me anymore. Like she'll just,
I think that's
milk.
That's I think hard when you my mother was very opposite me. So when our one teenage foster daughter had a baby, I try to get her on all natural things. Like, okay, you can breastfeed. That doesn't work out. You can do formula. When it comes time to food, we're not going to do crap filler rice cereal. We'll do Whole Foods. We'll make the baby's food. We're not going to introduce sugar. Trying to put her on the right path. And my mother's like, why can't the baby rice cereal? The baby needs rice cereal. So she's sneaking all this shit. I mean, it was a constant.
Is your mom a really angry Italian lady?
Yes, she's nuts. This is why we don't speak. You know what I mean? My aunt called me on Mother's Day and she was like, did you call your mother? I'm like, yeah, I sent a brochure for coffins. I'm just nuts. I can't. But this is part of the reason why.
Okay, so that's an example of a failed parent-child relationship.
Listen, when you're coming and contradicting everything I'm trying to do, your grandma, you don't live here, you don't have to deal with this. So when the foster daughter was older, when she went on the system, she would constantly like move back in. And finally, it's like, nah, we're not doing this. You're not coming back in, disrupting my kid's life. We're not, you need, like, go live with Joyce. Didn't she go live with my mother? It lasted a month, and my mother was tearing her hair out. I'm like, oh, you thought it was so easy, huh, Joyce? And go, how fucking fun is it now? But that's a challenge. I was the foster grandfather at 20-something.
Well, and look, let's all, like, another positive of being a parent, though. I think nothing more joyful in life, though, right, than really loving somebody and giving them all of your heart. And I think that love that you have with your child is very unconditional. And it's something that you won't ever get anywhere else. Like, it's a very unique relationship. And it's something that I think is very precious, and I'm glad that I've got it.
I don't know if you need to be a parent just to have that. Like, foster kids are like
absolutely not.
Nieces and nephews. Like, I always had that bond and was very close with them. I think
it's sort of funny. I think like life sort of, there's connections that people have on a soul level that, like, what's the word? Supersedes, is that a word? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm making shit up.
It's a word. Let's see how you use it, and I'll tell you if you're right.
Like, the day my oldest brother, like, met my daughter, they've been like this since then. Like, forever. Like, they just, whatever it is about they just have a connection. He's the only one who can get her to eat meat, so he's got powers. And I think that's just throughout life. Like, I was always very close to my grandmother. Even right up until she died, she did tell me I was her favorite. Sorry, everyone else. But you just have these connections with different people that I don't think there's no logic there or reasoning. Just your souls are somehow connected. I just believe that. That's my belief. I don't know how you guys feel.
I absolutely believe that's true.
Yeah.
There are people you connect with on a much deeper level.
I think
very quickly.
One of the joys, though, of children, again, as we spoke about, if we broaden whether your children are biological, fostered, nieces, nephews, or otherwise, I think one of the most joyful things about having children in my house is that it helps me activate my inner child. If I didn't have kids, I would never give myself permission to just sit and build Lego or to sit and do bad art or to make cupcakes on a Saturday afternoon and cover them with too much candy, just silly things. Or like the other night, my kids were teaching me this ridiculous sea shanty, and I cannot remember laughing that hard all year, probably for the last 5 years. And and every time I would get the words wrong, they would like bop me with this foam ball in my eyeballs. And it was so silly and so ridiculous, but such a unique thing that, even with my funniest friends, it supersedes, to use your word, any of that. And I think the lightness,
real word.
The lightness of being that children have, where they're so in the moment and they're so unafraid to just be silly and to have things not have to make sense and not be serious. And I think that's one of the most joyful things about being a parent or having children in your life, regardless of who they belong to or where they're from, is that they remind us to play and to not be so heavy and not always be thinking about bills or thinking about politics or thinking about the weather or thinking about whatever else, to just go, let's just play ball for 5 minutes because the sun is out and the wind is blowing and, let's blow bubbles, let's just be light in how we're, living our lives. I think that's one of the most delightful things for me about kids.
Yeah. No, it certainly does. You can be a kid again yourself, right?
Yeah.
With that. Yeah. You can play and do all those things.
Love using them as an excuse to watch like a kids movie or to watch an old movie, you know. Like I'm like, oh, the kids really like it. Meanwhile, I'm like, Wreck It Ralph is awesome, you know. Like,
Well, look, I let my
play
daughter watch
Pokemon Go.
movies I liked as a kid. So she's watching I Shrunk the Kids, and she loves that. Her favorite scenes when Belle's mopping the floor. Funnily, like nothing to do with being shrunk. But she loves Gremlins. But when I watch Gremlins with her, we watch Gremlins 1, 2. I'm like, holy crap! Like this movie's pretty scary. Like it's full on. Like, you know, people are dying here, man. And like, I thought this was so fun as a kid. Now I'm watching it as a parent, like through it, but she thinks it's great. And she's got a little gizmo doll and she thinks he's the best thing ever. But I was sort of watching it with her. Should we like stop this here? And I was like,
well, I think that's an interesting part of parenting, right? Like the way we were brought up with the things that people knew versus today. Like I look at, just like you, Luke, one of my favorite movies as a kid. I was in Catholic school, first grade. I tried to bring in the movie Mannequin for Friday movie day. Because back then, every Friday, we did a movie in the afternoon. We didn't go to school. And I tried to bring in Mannequin. She was like, oh, you know, and I remember watching Dallas and Dynasty with my mother. Lethal Weapon was a favorite of mine. You know, and now I'm like, I was like, oh, maybe. And I'm like watching it, like, oh my God. Like, what were
and who
you
want to
letting
wear
me
that final
watch?
cat suit that Michelle Pfeiffer was sewn into in Batman Returns? Like, come on.
I don't know. Like, we were big movie buffs, my cousin, at a video store. So I think probably, for me anyways, I got that it was movies and acting. And, you know, I loved everything about it. When I was...
plus Jim would always bring in the
Yeah.
props. He had all the props
Yeah,
in the
yes.
store. Yeah.
And then we'd get the screener copies, you know.
Yes.
And we would like, my grandfather would bring over his beta VCR and let us borrow it. So when I was in preschool, that's what I wanted for Christmas that year was a VCR. My mother's like, you're the only kid I know that, you know, you had to have your movies. Because it was just so fun to get lost in that Disney princess syndrome. The man's going to come and save you.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, you know, and probably where all my problems started.
You got
Disney
kissed
wrecked
without
the
consent.
generation.
Cinderella was my first VHS. Who knew
And
that
you're a
mother was a
pumpkin.
wicked stepmother?
That's terrible. Well, guys, I've enjoyed our little chat today. I think
I
it's
have
been
too.
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, we've just gas bagged about life, and it's nice just to catch up with everyone and just do these chilled out little talks and not have that pressure of being live as well. I love that. I can cut out when I make a fool of myself. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, you'll be pleased to know. Side note: I'm back in the studio tomorrow recording a song. Belinda and I are trying to get vocals down on a song together. So yes. So we'll see what happens.
That's very
but anyway,
cool.
she's already
I'll
laid
tell
her
Steve.
vocals.
Steve hit you up straight away.
Yeah.
He'll be like, what? What did she say?